Just imagine that after your death, someone took your pain and loneliness, twisted it, softened it, rounded all the edges, stripped it of the most important parts, and sold. And while you did as nobody, a disordered and censored version of your most intimate sorrow remained for centuries. And those were poems for which the author paid not only with his own life, but lost his family. And even after that, his own brother gave his life for these poems. In 1852, the frozen body of yamshchik was found after a long Siberian road. In his bag, manuscripts of poems were discovered. The author's name, Ivan Makarov, was not known during his lifetime. A year after their publication, Agurilov wrote music for the poem he liked the most. That is how the romance The Little Bell Rings Monotonously was born. The lyrics from the song look like this, and the English translation is very, very poor. It's bad, like really bad. Perhaps after reading the translation, you got this impression of what happened in the poem, although in reality it looked like this. That's because the translation Caro shows is actually bad. But what really matters is that the lyrics in the song are not real. The real poems of the yamshchik are much heavier, sadder than Gorilla's version. They reflect the real harsh reality of life in Russia, which Gorilov was afraid to show. And it's not for us to judge him, actually. I can understand why he didn't want to end up like our yamshchik. But in the comments under the romance, I found a person who made a really decent translation of the poem. The yamshchik mentioned in the poem is not a coachman, and the difference between the song translation and the original poem can be expressed with this picture. Now, this is how the real text looks according to some sources. It must be said, this version hits very hard. It's the most heavy lyrics that I read in my life. I will even break down separately what exactly is happening here. The level of loneliness, sorrow, and grief that the yamshchik conveys in this work is so great that honestly everything Maki may experience, it feels like a true freedom celebration. Text differs notably from the widely known version of the song. The reason is that under Nikolai I, Decembrists and the educated heroic wives suffered in Siberia. Singing about the long road to Siberia was neither appropriate nor timely. It can be assumed that Gorilov slightly changed and improved the text while adapting it to music. What is especially ironic is that Makarov Ivan Ivanovich, our yamshchik, was actually a poet who quietly wrote the real, uncomfortable truth his whole life. That is exactly what destroyed him. Why and how did this unknown poet, who carried such heavy sadness and loneliness, meet his end completely alone in the middle of a snowy desert. He froze to death, so his poems would be found like this. Not many people actually know that these are his poems and not just some kind of folk song. He was born into the family of yamshchik, belonged to the landowner Alexander Всеволожский, brother of Nikita Всеволодович Всеволожский, a childhood friend of Pushkin. But our character was not a sickly child who writes fairy tales. He was a peasant, and essentially that means he was a slave. His life and the lives of his family belonged to a landowner, so it is a miracle that he was even literate. He was taught by a local deacon. When Ivan had just turned 20, his father died, froze to death on a long winter road, and the son had to take on responsibilities of a parent. They had a large family. The Ivan's parents have 12 children, but only 3 sons survived. The rest died at early age. Ivan was the eldest, and he was already writing poems. For that, he was severely punished, torn away from his family and exiled. The poems were ironic. They mocked the landowner. They ridiculed the cruelty and uncultured behavior of the master. So someone reported him. The landlord's resolution was short. For writing verses unnecessary to His Excellency, sent him to the army. While in service, yamshchik received news from home, Siva, about the death of 2 brothers and his mother, serious illness. Under serfdom, an ordinary soldier was not allowed to go home, even in such situation. Ivan deserted from Perm to his native Siva. He managed to help his mother, but then he was arrested and, as punishment for leaving without permission, assigned as a yamshchik to the Perm convoy company. There were no literate people among yamshchiks. And Ivan was soon promoted. He became a senior yamshchik and escorted convoys of prisoners to Tyumen and even to Tomsk. To understand, in Russia, the distance are such that this route is like crossing the entire European country, like United Kingdom or France. Being a yamshchik is not the same as working as a coachman or a cab driver. If you watch it, anime Sentenced to be a Hero, it is very similar to that. A convenient state slave, useful and cheap, easy to replace, easy to eliminate. Being a yamshchik is like being sentenced to penal servitude. Sources indicate that in the archives of convoy units, another of his poems was found. It is called The Bell, My Friend. It contains the words, "You will freeze to death under my ringing." It is striking how pathetic they turned out to be. On February 10, 1852, Ivan Makarov was found frozen to death. Here is what a document from the Perm convoy company states. To Anfiska Gavrilkina, daughter of Makar, handed over the belongings of her son, Vashka Ivashkin, senior yamshchik of the convoy, a worn sock, a worn boots, 2 sets of underwear unfit for wear, a decent cup, and papers with scribbles. Ivan's younger brother, Saffron, was born in the year of the father's death, and after poet's death, Saffron was torn to death by the landowner Всеволожский dogs for reciting improper poems about his excellency to the serfs. Also, Gurilov wrote music to other poems by our yamshchik, Falling Star and On the Frosty Night I Watched. And they too are filled with heartbreak and loneliness, but also love. It seems our yamshchik had someone he loved, maybe, but no one will ever know. I will translate and read his poems separately in another videos. For everyone who is watched me for the first and last time, thank you for noticing and being here.